I remember the scent of my mother's lavender soap and my father's aftershave, a comforting blend that once signified home, safety, and unconditional love. Those memories, now tinged with a bitter irony, feel like echoes from a different lifetime. My name is Clara, and this is the story of how my parents, the two people who were supposed to be my bedrock, decided I was expendable, leaving everything to my brother, and then, with a cold, cutting text message, severed our relationship forever. But it's also the story of how I found my own strength, built my own world, and ultimately found a profound peace that they could never take from me. From an early age, I understood, perhaps subconsciously, that my brother, Daniel, occupied a different space in my parents' hearts. He was the golden child, the one who needed more protection, more guidance, more everything. I was the sturdy oak, the one who could weather any storm, the independent spirit who would always find her way. This wasn't explicitly stated, of course. It was in the subtle nuances, the longer hugs for Daniel when he scraped his knee, the extra patience afforded to his academic struggles, the way my father's eyes would soften just a fraction more when Daniel spoke. I, on the other hand, was met with quiet nods of approval for my straight A's, a quick pat on the back for winning a competition. It wasn't neglect, not outright, but it was a distinct lack of the effusive, unconditional adoration Daniel received. I learned early on to rely on myself, to find validation in my own achievements, a trait that would paradoxically become both my greatest strength and the very reason my parents eventually cast me aside. Growing up, Daniel and I were different. He was charming, a little reckless, and often struggled with consistency. I was disciplined, focused, and driven. I excelled in school, worked part-time jobs through college to lessen the financial burden on my parents, and meticulously planned my future. Daniel drifted, tried various ventures, often needing financial bailouts or emotional support from our parents. I never resented him for it. He was my brother, and I loved him. But I did notice how my parents' concern for Daniel often overshadowed any pride they might have felt for my accomplishments. My successes were expected. His struggles were a crisis requiring immediate intervention. After college, I moved to a different city, eager to carve out my own path. I worked relentlessly, climbing the corporate ladder in a demanding but rewarding field. I bought my first small apartment, paid off my student loans, and slowly, painstakingly, built a comfortable life for myself. Daniel, meanwhile, remained closer to home, still navigating various passion projects that never quite took off. My parents, particularly my mother, would often call, not to ask about my latest promotion or my new hobbies, but to update me on Daniel's latest predicament, invariably followed by a subtle plea for me to offer advice or, more often, financial assistance. I always helped within my means, because family was family, or so I thought. The first tremor of the earthquake that would shatter my family came during a seemingly innocuous Sunday dinner. I had driven home for the weekend, looking forward to a rare, peaceful meal. The air felt heavy, though I couldn't place why. My father cleared his throat, a sound that always signaled something serious. My mother fidgeted with her napkin. Daniel, unusually quiet, stared at his plate. "Clara," my father began, his voice surprisingly formal, "your mother and I have been discussing our estate planning. We've decided it's time to finalize things." My heart sank a little. Estate planning, it felt so final, so adult. I braced myself for the usual parental advice, perhaps a reminder to update my own will. "We've decided," my mother interjected, her voice softer than usual, "to leave everything to Daniel." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My fork clattered against my plate. I stared at them, a cold dread creeping through my veins. "Everything?" I managed to choke out. My father nodded, avoiding my gaze. "The house, the savings, the investments, everything." He finally met my eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Guilt? Defiance? "Daniel, he needs it more, Clara. You're so independent, so capable. You've always been able to make your own way. Daniel, he struggles. He needs a safety net. This is for his future." I felt a strange mix of emotions: shock, disbelief, and a profound, aching pain. It wasn't about the money, not really. I had built my own financial security. It was about the message. It was about being told, in no uncertain terms, that I was less worthy, less loved, less family than my brother. It was the ultimate validation of every subtle slight, every unspoken favoritism I'd experienced my entire life. "So," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "I get nothing? After everything? After I worked to put myself through college? After I never asked for a handout? After I always supported you both and Daniel?" My mother reached across the table, her hand hovering, but I recoiled. "Clara, don't be dramatic. You don't need it. This isn't a slight against you. It's a provision for Daniel." Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. "Clara, I'm sorry. I didn't ask for this." But his eyes held a subtle glint, a flicker of relief, perhaps even triumph. I looked at my parents, their faces etched with a strange combination of resolve and discomfort. "You've made your choice," I said, rising from the table, the half-eaten meal suddenly tasting like ash. "And I understand it perfectly." I left that night, the familiar scent of lavender and aftershave now smelling like betrayal. The weeks that followed were a blur of emotional turmoil. I tried to reason with them, to understand their logic, to appeal to the love I believed still existed. I called my mother, my voice trembling with raw hurt. "Mom, how could you do this? Do you know how much this hurts me? It feels like you're saying I'm not your daughter." Her response was chillingly calm. "Clara, you're being overly sensitive. We love you. This isn't about love. It's about practicalities. Daniel needs our help more. You're strong. You'll be fine." Every conversation was a variation of this theme. My pain dismissed, my feelings invalidated, my strength weaponized against me. I tried to talk to Daniel, hoping he might intercede, might understand my hurt. He was evasive, uncomfortable. "Look, Clara, it's their decision. What can I do? I'm just trying to make them happy." His passivity felt like complicity. The realization slowly dawned on me. They truly believed they were doing the right thing, and my feelings were an inconvenient obstruction. I wasn't just disinherited financially, I was being disinherited emotionally. The emotional well I had always drawn from, the one I believed was endless, was now dry. The final brutal blow came a few months later. It was my birthday, a day I usually spent with my family, even if it was just a quiet dinner. I hadn't heard from them all day. No calls, no texts. As evening approached, a profound sadness settled over me. Had they forgotten? Did they simply not care anymore? Just as I was about to resign myself to a lonely evening, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. My heart leaped with a flicker of hope, quickly extinguished by the cold, stark message that flashed across my screen. "It's over between us. We can't keep going through this. It's too much drama. We wish you well." It's over between us. 7 words. 7 words that ripped through me like a jagged blade, severing not just a relationship, but a lifetime of shared history, of imagined futures. My mother, the woman who had brought me into this world, had just disowned me via text message. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. I sank to the floor, the phone still clutched in my hand, tears streaming down my face. The weight of years of unspoken hurt, of feeling secondary, of constantly striving for an approval that would never come, crashed down on me. It was not just the sting of rejection, but the profound, gut-wrenching realization that the family I had always known, the foundation of my existence, was a mirage. That night, I cried until there were no more tears left. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity, a cold, hard resolve. They had made their choice. They had drawn a line in the sand, and I was on the wrong side of it. I would not beg, I would not plead, I would not allow myself to be a convenient scapegoat for their guilt or a punching bag for their dismissiveness. I blocked their numbers, I unfriended them on social media, I deleted their photos from my phone. It was an agonizing process, like amputating a limb, but I knew, deep down, it was necessary for my survival. For a long time, the silence was deafening. Holidays were brutal. Birthdays were a reminder of the chasm that had opened. There were moments of intense longing, of wanting to pick up the phone and just hear their voices, to pretend none of this had ever happened. But then I would remember the text, the coldness in their eyes, the dismissal of my pain, and the resolve would harden again. I poured myself into my work, into new friendships, into hobbies I had always wanted to pursue. I started therapy, slowly unraveling the complex threads of abandonment and self-worth that had been woven into my being since childhood. It was a long, arduous journey of healing. I learned to reparent myself, to give myself the unconditional love and validation I had always craved from my parents. I found a community of friends who became my chosen family, people who celebrated my successes and supported me through my struggles without judgment. I met a wonderful man, Mark, who saw me for who I was, cherished my independence, and loved me fiercely. We built a life together, a home filled with laughter, respect, and mutual support, a home that felt truly like my own. Years passed. My career flourished, exceeding even my own ambitious expectations. I traveled, explored, and experienced life with a newfound joy and freedom. I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy. And then the call started. First, from Daniel, tentative and awkward. He claimed to be checking in. Later, the messages from mutual acquaintances, hinting that my parents were getting older, that my mother's health wasn't what it used to be. The subtext was clear. They needed me, or rather, they needed the capable, strong daughter they had so casually discarded. One day, a letter arrived. My mother's familiar handwriting, shaky now, addressed to me. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. The letter was a rambling apology, laced with regret. It spoke of loneliness, of missing me, of realizing the mistakes they had made. It mentioned Daniel's struggles, his inability to manage the inheritance effectively, their growing financial difficulties, and their failing health. It was a plea, thinly veiled, for me to return, to help, to be their daughter again. I read the letter several times, my heart a strange mix of sorrow and detachment. The raw pain was gone, replaced by a quiet ache. I remembered the little girl who had desperately yearned for their approval, the young woman who had been shattered by their betrayal. That girl, that woman, was no longer me. I was Clara, a woman who had built her own empire of happiness and strength, brick by painful brick. I felt no triumph, no desire for vengeance in the traditional sense. My revenge, I realized, was simply living my best life, a life they had no part in, a life they could only observe from the outside, filled with the quiet regret of what they had lost. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't reach out. It wasn't out of malice, but out of self-preservation. To go back, to open that door, would be to invite the old wounds to fester anew. I had healed, and I would protect that healing fiercely. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. My choice was to live, truly live, for myself. And in doing so, I finally found the unconditional love and acceptance I had always sought, not from them, but from within, and from the beautiful, chosen family I had built around me. The scent of lavender and aftershave no longer signifies home to me. Home is now the smell of freshly baked bread, the comfort of Mark's embrace, and the quiet hum of a life I built all on my own terms.